Again, a very good evening to each and every one of you. Let us spend another day of closely studying the discourses of the Buddha. Again, to appreciate this opportunity, appreciate this moment, appreciate the opportunity to the access to the teachings of the Buddha. So it is very rare that we will have teachings available of an enlightened Buddha. So we have to reflect on that fortune that we are enjoying right now. And in fact, not in human history, not in all time, there is a Buddha. And we are fortunate to be born in a period where the teachings of the Buddha are available. And then all the teachings of the Buddha are available, we could have been conditioned our mind to turn our eyes off from the teachings of the Buddha, turn our minds off from the teachings of the Buddha. But it didn't happen to us, and we have opened our mind and eyes to the teachings of the Buddha. And then all the teachings are available, and then we are ready to learn. We have open mind to learn and study, but we could have, sometimes certain conditions and circumstances, can happen that we can't read anymore, we can't listen anymore, we can't, study anymore. We can be in such a physical or mental condition. So we were fortunate that, all this, we were fortunate to, come to a moment in our life that we overcame all these obstacles that could have been happened to us. And this moment is such a precious moment in that situation. And our organs are still working. We can hear, we can listen, we can read. And our mind is open and teachings are available. And so we are so fortunate to have not a small piece of paper in front of you right now. Of course, what we have in front of you is a small piece of paper. But actually, this is like precious gems for us to enhance our deep understanding and to have progress in our spiritual growth. Okay, so with that appreciation, let us start our sutta today, and it is the Abhayasutta. Abhaya is a very familiar term for all of us, right? I think the most way that the term Abhaya can be familiar to us is with Abhaya Mudra. One of the gestures of the Buddha is called Abhaya gesture. Yes. So the Buddha statue right behind me is having a gesture called Samadhi gesture, the stillness, tranquility gesture. And then based on different hand positions and shapes of the hands, we have different gestures of the Buddha to communicate different enlightened qualities of the Buddha. As you may know already, the statues of the Buddhas were made after at least 4 centuries after the Buddha's passing away. So initially, nobody dared to create an image of the Buddha. And if you go to Sanchi, we find all the carvings of the episodes of the life story of the Buddha. So you find all the characters in these carvings, but the Buddha is absent in those carvings. Instead of the Buddha, you have other disciples, other devotees, other characters. Instead of the Buddha, what you find is a Bodhi tree, or the footprint of the Buddha, or the Dhamma wheel, stupa, and all kind of symbolic presentation of the Buddha. That is 2nd century BCE. But of course, that's a different story. So however, when the statues were started made, it was much later. And therefore, what the Buddhist or artists were trying to do is not to recreate the historical Buddha, not to recreate the historical Buddha, but actually what they were trying to do is to exemplify the qualities of the Buddha. They exemplify the qualities of the enlightened mind. So they use different postures and gestures to exemplify those great qualities of the Buddha. So the gestures are one way to communicate that inner qualities of the Buddha. So Samadhi gesture is one such gesture, and Abhaya gesture is another one. So if you see the hand of the Buddha facing like this, and then usually in a standing posture we find that Buddha is holding the robe on the other hand, and hand is like this, not towards like this. This is giving blessings, and this is giving teachings. But if the hand is like this, that shows the strength. That's called fearlessness, the gesture of fearlessness, fortitude, strength, unmovable strength. And it shows that we can make our mind fearless, and it shows the fearlessness of the Buddha and also helping us to be fearless with that gesture. So that's called Abhaya Mudra. So today's sutta is also about this fearlessness. So we can start reading. Okay, so let us read the first part of this. Then Janussanin, the Brahmin, went to the Buddha and said, and on arrival exchanged courteous greetings with him. After an exchange of friendly greetings and courtesies, he sat to one side. As he was sitting there, he said to the Blessed One, I am of the view and opinion that there is no one who, subject to death, is not afraid or in terror of death. Okay, let us stop right there. So this Janusani, an educated person, the Brahmins are the one who has the access to education those days, and he went to the Buddha and greeted the Buddha, and then in exchange, this introductory words, and he sat down on one side, and then he expressed his opinion, very general opinion, that he is in the opinion that everyone is afraid of death, in simple terms. Everyone is afraid of, everyone who is subject to death is afraid of death. So this is like a common sense, right? Common knowledge, and we all accept that everyone is afraid of death. So he just expressed his opinion, this common sense, common understanding, common idea that everyone is afraid of death. Is it true, right? It is true, right? Everyone, is there anyone here who is not afraid of death? Yeah. And then Buddha replied in a very interesting way. Let us read that part. The Blessed One said, Brahman, there are those who subject to death are afraid and in terror of death, and there are those who subject to death are not afraid or terror of death. Okay. So Buddha is not ready to accept this common sense understanding, this almost like taken for granted idea that everybody is afraid of death. Buddha is saying that, Brahmin, yes, there are people who are afraid of death, and there are also people who are not afraid of death. Which category you like to be? Second category, right? So, and then what is the whole sutta is about explaining who are the people who are afraid of death and who are the people who are not afraid of death. Understanding this whole thing very clearly can help us to move beyond our normal inherited fear of death. I mean, the fear of death is not only individual fear, but it's also kind of inherited from our, evolutionary process. So, but, the Buddha's teachings are helping us to even go beyond, transcend the ordinary, very normal, inherited tendencies also. And particularly when you think about the subject of death altogether is something that we don't really like to talk about. We are afraid of death so much that we even don't want to talk about that. And in many cultures, the discussion talking about death is a taboo, right? And so we really want to avoid it. And that is like many human civilizations, in many cultures, different cultures of the world, they try to kind of hide the death. Even when you passed away, even in a funeral, all the efforts are to hide the death. You prepare the dead person as if that person is not dead. I mean, you can examine what we are really doing unconsciously. Many cultures, the whole funeral arrangement, everything is actually not to reveal the death, but to hide the death and make sure that nothing has happened. So that's our tendency. That's how we relate to the death. But within Buddhist doctrines, in the teachings of the Buddha, actually, death is not something that we should ignore. We should escape. We should hide. Death is something that we should really contemplate on. So that is why in Buddhism we have a meditation on death, not only discussion of death. It's not like we simply have a discussion about death, but a meditation, the whole meditation on death. It's a way to really confront this and to understand the reality and have a deeper understanding of this. So it may sound quite strange, but actually as sensible, wise human beings, we should move towards that. I remember when I was a small monk in my early days of my, monkhood. So early morning, we have our morning chanting and meditation. So, of course, as a small, monk, the most difficult thing those days was to wake up early in the morning. So, but when the bell rang, we have to, otherwise our masters will come and knock the door and open. So even though master don't come, our other colleagues make sure that we wake up and we go to the shrine room because they are awake, so they don't want others to sleep. So, so I remember that when we go to the morning chanting and meditation, and we used to do chanting and also 4 types of meditation early in the morning in short forms. Loving kindness, contemplating the reflection of the qualities of the Buddha, and reflecting the fragilities of the body, and also meditation on death. And that sounded very strange to me. When you wake up and you get ready for the day, and as the first thing in the day, you go and meditate on death. Is this the first thing you want to do early in the morning? Isn't there any other wholesome, positive thing that you can talk about, you can think about, you can contemplate about? So those were the thoughts that really came to me, my mind, that early in the morning, still about 4:35, of course you do the chanting and you recite these formulas. One head monk will recite and we have to repeat. Life is uncertain, death is certain. Day by day, we are going close to the death. And no one is, escaping the death, and everyone has born so far have already died. And so those phrases, moment by moment, we are going close to the death. And so I was having these thoughts, is this the best thing to do as the first thing in the day? But I dare not to ask those days, but I simply did the practice. But actually what really happened eventually, that I really made sense of that whole practice. Because when you truly understand that death is an eminent thing in your life, you begin to realize the value of your life only when you think about life together with the death. If you forget the death, life has no value. When you bring the death to your life and think about life together with the death, suddenly life becomes such a valuable thing. So the reflection that you are doing every morning, remembering that I am dying, I am subject to death every morning, made me realize later that actually every day is a gift. Every day is a gift, such a wonderful thing. And every day is a day that you can grow as an opportunity for you to practice. So you feel like there's no time to waste. and you start to appreciate every moment, every day. So I realized that actually, yes, that, every day you realize that actually that your life is so precious. So talking about death is not bad, but of course we have to do it in a guided, in a proper format. Because sometimes if you simply talk about death without having proper guidance, people can get depressed. So it's really important to do in a proper context. So therefore, talking about death in Buddhism is a form of meditation, a form of practice, and it's also given as a technique to create urgency. We talk about that, one solution for sleepiness, one solution when we are having sleepiness in meditation. And then one solution, one technique to get rid of the sleepiness in meditation, is to reflect that you can die tomorrow. So you don't have time to sleep. You don't have time to take time and, having this lazy approach to this meditation. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. There are so many causes, conditions, we end up in dying. So when you reflect that, you become, like urgencies arises and, your sleepiness can be gone. So it's always, considered a positive, effective technique to contemplate on the death. So Buddha explains in this discourse who are the people who are afraid of death. Okay, let us read that part together. And who is the person who, subject to death, is afraid and in terror of death? There's a case of the person who has not abandoned passion, desire, fondness, thirst, fever, craving for sensuality. Then he comes down with a serious disease. As he comes down with a serious disease, the thought occurs to him, "Oh, those beloved sensual pleasures will be taken from me, and I will be taken from them." He grieves, is tormented, weeps, beats his breast, and grows delirious. This is a person who is subject to death, is afraid and in terror of death. Okay, so not all are afraid of death, but the people who have different forms of attachment to sensuality. What we mean by sensuality is, let's say, sensual pleasures. When we have different levels of attachment to sensual pleasures, those are the people who are vulnerable to have such a fear and terror in front of the death. So we have different terms here like passion, desire, fondness, thirst. Those are like different grades of attachment to sensuality, sensual pleasures. And like when it comes to like fever, and then like craving that's so strong, so we can have those kind of levels. So what's going to happen when we have such a strong attachment to sensuality? Whatever we see, hear, and sense, in the process of dying, you are going to lose all this ability to see, to enjoy, to pleasure, to smell, and all kind of things. So actually, the fear comes not really from any kind of physical discomfort that's going to happen in the process of dying. Actually, fear comes from different reasons. What people are fearful, not to the actual process of dying, but actually what they have to leave behind because of the death. That is the one that actually creates, fear and discomfort in us. So here is talking about the sensuality. So what really happening, what Buddha is really explaining here, that when we only find satisfaction and happiness only with regard to our sensual pleasures, only with regard to our whatever visual forms, sounds, tastes, if you only find our happiness only along these lines, And then definitely you are going to have terror because you are going to lose all these things. And then let's talk about how we can get rid of that when it comes to the other part, the people who are not afraid of death. But we need to remember here that actually what Buddha is telling is that, when you have this, in Buddhism there's no teaching that says that our sensual pleasures are evil. What Buddhism is teaching us is actually our sensual pleasures are limited. They are not completely fulfilling us, although we think that they will fulfill us. And that is why we try one after the other, although no matter how many times we failed in our life to fully satisfy with our sensual pleasures, we still keep trying, thinking that, next time it will be okay. But Buddha is telling us that, our human mind cannot be fully satisfied with sensual pleasures. And so it's limited. So one reason it's limited. It's not necessarily evil, but it's limited. But it can be dangerous if we attach to them. There's a danger, not in sensual pleasures themselves. If we attach to them, there's a danger. Of course, one danger is having this fear, but also there's also danger that we generate so much attachment and that it prolongs our samsaric existence, and then it is the ingredients for suffering. And so at the end, actually, the problem with the sensual pleasures that actually they bring more suffering than happiness. That's the issue. It's a very practical issue here. Like it brings some kind of pleasure, definitely, but it brings more suffering than pleasures. So it's not smart, if you only rely on sensual pleasures. So of course, definitely it can, and many people ended up doing all kind of unwholesome deeds, bad karma, because of the desire for sensual pleasures. So in that way, it can be so dangerous, because we can commit all kind of bad karma just to satisfy our, senses. Just to satisfy our senses, we will do all kind of bad karma, and then we become, owners and victims of all those karmas too. But importantly, our attachment to sensual pleasures can also be a hindrance to our awakening, a fetter for our awakening. So that is why in Buddhism we talk about sensual pleasure not in a positive light, not because they themselves are evil, but actually they are not. It's not skillful. They are not fulfilling. They are limited. That's the whole point. So, but in normal mind, what's going to happen when we rely our whole happiness only on our senses and sensual pleasures? Definitely, we will encounter terror and fear in front of death, because we are going to lose so many things. And then based on that sensual pleasure, we will also think about all the things that you are going to leave behind. How about your jewelries? You are going to lose them all. Think about that. And many other things. Of course, not to talk about our relatives, our family and all other things. So definitely it can create terror and fear for those who are so much attached, only see their happiness, only rely on those things for their happiness and satisfaction. Okay. Let's talk about the other group of people. Let's read that part. Furthermore, there's a case of the person who has not abundant passion, desire, fondness, thirst, fever, craving for the body. When this comes down with a serious disease, as he comes down with a serious disease, thought occurs to him, my body will be taken from me. I'll be taken my body. He grieves, tormented, weeps, beats his breast, grows delirious. This is too is a person who, subject to death, is afraid of in terror of death. Or the first one is a sensuality That means experiences that we get through our pressures, we get through sensation, we get through our sensory organs. So craving for those things. The second one is actually craving for the very body itself. Passion, desire, fondness, thirst, fever, and craving for the body. Because we are going to leave behind the body. And then, of course, we not only actually attached to our body, but actually we have also created a strong identity with our body. You know, our body is the most tangible, most foundational basis where we construct our identity. Like, when you close your eyes and when you think about yourself, what appears in your mind? It's the image of your body. Like when you think about yourself, when I'm going there and who I am, when you think about what comes to your mind, it's not a flower, not a cloud, actually that image of the body. And then very easily when somebody show you a photograph, there could be like 20, 30 people, very quickly you can detect yourself there, right? Very quickly. It takes only a second because we have such a strong identity that we have constructed to our body. Even you may not showing your face, even in the photo only your back, but still you can recognize yourself in that photo very quickly. That shows our strong identity that we have made with regard to this body. So if you really have that strong identity and this is me, and when you are dying, definitely you feel such a terror. So that's the second group of people who have such a craving for body. Remember, it is this craving and attachment to body is also called Sakkaya Ditthi. What you usually translate as a personality view or personality belief, as Sakkaya Ditthi. And that's a strong tendency in all of us, but that creates terror and fear in people who are dying. So we can understand now actually the fear and terror of death comes not really from the very experience of dying, but actually from the attachment to body and then other things. Okay, let's see the third group of people. Furthermore, there's a case of the person who has not done what is good, has not done what is skillful, has not given protection to those in fear, and instead he has done what is evil, savage, cruel. Then he comes down with a serious disease. As he comes down with a serious disease, the thought occurs to him, I have not done what is good, have not done what is skillful, have not given protection to those in fear, and instead have done what is evil, savage, and cruel, to the extent that there is a destination for those who have not done what is good, have not done what is skillful, have not given protection to those in fear, and instead have done what is evil, savage, cruel. That is where I am headed after death. He grieves, is tormented, weeps, beats his breast, and grows delirious. And this is to a person who is subject to death, is afraid and in terror of death. Okay. Those people who have not done good in life and also who have done bad in life. Maybe when they are doing those things, they may disregard, they may even not think about possibility of death, they will behave as if they're not dying. But when the moment comes, when they are helpless in the process of dying, then they become quite serious. They cannot ignore anymore. They have been escaping the reality all the while and doing all kind of things. But when the death comes and you really confront that and then you start to question, and what's going to happen to me? So those are the third group of people who are afraid of dying. Maybe when people are actually committing all kind of unwholesome things, they may have all kind of beliefs. They may have all kind of beliefs that justify, their bad doings, and they may not even believe any retribution of our bad deeds. But when they actually face in the actual reality, when they are getting to know that actually they are going to die, and then they actually change. They actually become quite serious. And that moment can be a very difficult moment for them to go. So, and also the other one is actually not done enough good deeds. You have this human life, you have this human body, and you lived so many years, and by using your body, how many good things that you have done. If you feel like that you haven't done enough, and you had these good opportunities, you haven't done enough, and then again you can be in fear of death also. So now you can understand the opposite, right? How we can be not afraid of death, right? Well, let's come to that. That's the next part of the sutta. Okay, let us go to the last group of people who are afraid of death. Let us read that one. Furthermore, there's a case of the person in doubt, perplexity, who has not arrived at certainty with regard to the true dharma. Then he comes down with a serious disease. As he comes down with a serious disease, the thought occurs to him, how doubtful and perplexed I am. I have not arrived at any certainty with regard to the true dharma. He grieves, is tormented, weeps, beats his breast, and grows delirious. This too is a person who, subject to death, is afraid and in terror of death. So the third group of people actually who are actually having uncertainty of life itself. Of course, he is mentioning those people who have not have good, stable understanding of the Dhamma. Having a good understanding of the Dhamma means having a good understanding of life itself. How life happens, how this mind works, how these things, how the death happens, very knowledge about the death. And when you are not sure, maybe in the beginning you are not serious or you don't take enough time to learn, and then, but if you are not really sure what's going to happen after you die, and that is such a bad place to be. Like you are unsure, you are perplexed, you are confused, you don't know what's going to happen. You haven't given any deeper thought about it. You haven't done any study, you haven't have any deeper understanding about it. And then definitely you'll be confused, like almost like you are being deported to a land that you had no idea. Right? And that's really terrifying. So the lack of deep understanding, the doubtfulness, uncertainty, and that really creates this kind of fear. But if we have a good, stable understanding of the Dhamma, right, and even the very process of dying, we'll talk about it later, and then we can get rid of that fear. Okay. So now we know that's not all people who are afraid of death, who are terrifying when we hear about the death, but only people who have attachment to sensual pleasures, who have attachment to body, who have not done enough good, but instead of done so much bad, and who have not have a certainty of the life itself, who have not have a certain knowledge of the Dhamma, and these are the ones who will be afraid of death. So now you can get an idea which camp you want to be, and then you can decide, which camp you want to be. And let's go to read the other part. It's quite obvious. Actually, the opposite are the people who do not have these other ones who are not afraid of death. But let us try to understand how we can actually come to that level. Okay, let us continue to read. The other page, next page, let's see together. And who is the person who, subject to death, is not afraid of death or in terror of death? There's a case of the person who has abandoned passion, desire, fondness, thirst, fever, craving for sensuality. then he comes down with a serious disease. As he comes down with a serious disease, the thought does not occur to him, "Oh, those beloved sensual pleasures will be taken from me, and I'll be taken from them." He does not grieve, is not tormented, does not weep, beat his breast, and grow delirious. This is the person who, subject to death, is not afraid or in terror of death. It's so interesting to read, how Buddha is describing how normal person is grieving, is like having this fear. Like people can start grieving and then is tormented and then weeping and beat his breast and grow delirious, means go confused and confused in the mind. And those are the different stages of being sad and being upset. So it's so interesting to see that this description, like even people like beat their breast, or even beat themselves. Sometimes we can do that, and sometimes people knock their head against others. When they really get upset about that. So these are the different stages of having that fear and having that suffering. But the idea, the person who has abandoned the passion, fear, desire for the sensuality, sensual pleasures. And how we can do that? How we can abandon our craving and deeper attachment to sensual pleasures, to our things that we see, hear, smell, taste. How we can do that? In normal life, those are the only resource that we can enjoy our life. We need beautiful sounds, we need beautiful things, we need nice smells and good food, definitely. And then, of course, nice, beautiful, soft, comfortable sensation. And this is how we live our life, this is how we enjoy our life. And if you only enjoy your life, only relying on those things, and definitely you are going to, experience fear as a result of that. But how we can transcend that? And what in our Dhamma practice, actually, with regard to sensual pleasures, we do two things. First, we try to enjoy our sensual pleasures within a moral framework. That is the first change we do. We are going to enjoy beautiful things, seeing beautiful things. We are going to enjoy beautiful music or whatever sounds. We are going to enjoy our food. We are going to enjoy pleasurable tactile sensations, but we are going to do it within the moral framework. Not exploiting others in our process of enjoying these sensual pleasures. Not exploiting others, do it in a moral framework, the 5 precepts, and not to having a sensual indulgence, but not to having sexual misconduct, for example. So do these things within the moral framework. That is the first step. The second step or second technique, as Buddhists we use, is actually start a practice of meditation. Because the very meditation is actually showing us a way that we can actually be happy inside of ourselves without necessarily without necessarily to rely on our senses to make ourselves happy. So you find a different kind of access to happiness more than the sensual pleasures. Of course, we will use our eyes and ears and nose and tongues and our skin to be happy, but actually at the end, what really becomes happy is not the eye, not the ear, not the tongue, not the nose. Then what becomes happy? The mind, right? So we use our eye to make our mind happy. We use our ear to make our mind happy. So we use all these things to make our mind happy. So ultimately, actually, what becomes happy is the mind, not the senses. So meditation is that you bypass all these external agents. You directly address the mind and make the mind happy. There's no problem. You don't have to rely on the agent of I, because otherwise all the agents, they have their own conditions. right? And then we had to go through an agent to make our mind happy, right? And we had to rely on the eye. And what if the agent strike? Like, sometime, our nose strike when we have cold. You don't get any aroma, anything when you're in cold. Our tongue, strikes, go to strike when you have, fever, other sickness. You don't really feel any taste. And also, of course, our, those senses are also decaying gradually. Like, and, your ability to see things will be changed, the more you grow old and older and older, right? And so relying on these agents are quite dangerous, right? And recently one of my friends got a cataract operation in one of her eyes. So she had to wait to get the other eyes operated for some time. And she told me when she opened her eyes and look at things, she see everything in two shades. When she opened her unoperated eye, she see everything in yellow, a yellowish shade. When you close that eye and open the operated eye, she see everything with more white. So more white shades in the good eye, and more yellow kind of shades in the other eye. And that's what she told me. So it shows that actually what we see is not really actually what is there, but actually it's conditioned so much by our ability of our eyes. So the more we grow older, our eyes are changing, and our abilities, our ability to see things going to be changed. Of course we will lose our hearing, and no use of music then, right? So what meditation is doing actually, kind of not relying on these agents, but directly go to the mind and find a way to make the mind happy and peaceful. So all the meditation practices, particularly samadhi, practices that calm our mind, is helping us to do such a thing. That's when you experience deeper happiness within the meditation. Happiness you get as a relaxation of your senses, relaxation of your mind, relaxation of the mind, the very yearning of the mind. When you experience such a deep piece of happiness, you are not afraid of losing your sensory organs, because you have more deeper resource of happiness. That's the way. And also you will understand that all the sensual pleasures are temporary, they come and go, and then you will turn more towards the more enduring kind of happiness you will enjoy through meditation. And instead, so then you are not very much afraid of losing the sensual pleasures. In fact, the very process of meditation is giving you some kind of rehearsal of the dying process. You first close your eyes. In the process of dying, what's going to happen? Your sensory organs are going to deteriorate one by one, right? You are going to stop your sensory organs one by one. You lose your vision, you lose your other sensory ability, your smell, your taste. I heard that the hearing is the last one to lose. So even imagine that suddenly you stop seeing anything. That's so terrifying. But if you have done meditation before, you know that place. You are familiar with being there, not seeing anything. You have been so conditioned, you are so familiar with that peaceful state that you can experience when you don't see anything. So in the very practice of meditation, you actually being familiar with the with the states that that's going to happen when you die. You're not afraid of losing your senses, because you already kind of experienced it before, and you already find a deeper happiness in that whole thing. And I had a very interesting experience actually in Pittsburgh. One of our friends who come to our Buddhist center wanted to introduce one of her friends, and who got a brain tumor. And our friend told me that this good friend got this brain tumor, based on the location of that tumor, and he's going to lose his sensory abilities one by one, for sure, before he die. Before he die, he will lose his sight, lose other things. So this friend really wanted us to help her friend to find some ways that actually when these things are shutting down, that he can stay in calm inside himself. Imagine that when your sensory organs are like shut down, you are almost like in prison inside, in a cage, right? Unable to go out, and no way to come contact with anything outside, but you're kind of stuck there, right? So that's going to happen to him for sure in few months. So our friend really wanted us to help him. So she, as a Buddhist practitioner, she knew that meditation can help him. So he was not a Buddhist. I mean, the friend was not a Buddhist, but he convinced him this will help you. So she brought him to us. So we explained him, what we can do. He was quite open. He was actually a musician by his profession. So we took few months for him to teach meditation. So we teach him to pay his attention on the breath, and then shut down his all other senses as much as possible, and then be contented with the very experience of breathing, paying detailed attention to that whole experience of breathing, and be comfortable with that, be contented with that, because the breathing is the last thing to go. If we somehow find a way to be comfortable, be contented with the breath, and the whole dying process will be such a comfortable process for you, right? So we taught him gradually to somehow be comfortable with his breath, comfortable even when he's not seeing and hearing and not having any sensory experiences. So he was very good because he has an urgent need, right? So he came 2 days a week, and we started to teach him. He gradually picked everything. And also we also did, as a way of helping him to get into meditation, we also did some chanting. And of course, as a musician, he liked the chanting very much. So we did the chanting, he used the chanting, and then after that, he himself go into meditation. He spent in meditation for many, many minutes. They find it comfortable. So before his condition get worse, he was able to find an inner resource of happiness. And then actually, and he liked chanting also. But then, of course, he was gradually deteriorating. It slowly became very weak, and he was put into hospice. And then one day, our friend, we visited our friend, our Buddhist practitioner, and she was not happy on that day. And she had told me that friend you taught meditation is in hospice. It looks like it's not doing really well. And we suggested her that, why not, we go and visit him. So we suddenly decided to go and see him. So when we visited him, he actually kind of only breathing. He didn't open his eyes, and many of the senses are already shut off. But he was living, he was breathing. But we talked to him, because, I knew that, he may still hear. So I talked to him, we came to see you, and we have already taught you meditation. So we are here to again for you to go back and do in that peaceful place. We will help you. And so we start to chant Metta Sutta. And towards the end of the Metta Sutta, we heard that he took a long, deep in-breath, and then he released that breath, and he took another short breath, and he stopped breathing in the middle of chanting. But we continue our chanting. We completed the chanting, and then we asked a nurse to come. A nurse come and check his pulses and inform us that actually he just passed away. What I believe that actually he took the chance. He was, trying, and then, but when we were there, we did the chanting. He remembered what he practiced. I think he really, went to that deep meditative state. He used that opportunity to peacefully go, to let go. So it's such a wonderful death, actually. So in that way, actually, the whole process of meditation is kind of enabling us to go beyond our senses. And if you have such a practice, you will not be afraid in front of the death, because you know more deeper level of happiness than the sensual pleasure. You will never be afraid that those pleasures will be taken from me, because you already have, practiced how to be away with them beforehand. Okay, let's take the next part, next one. Furthermore, there's a case of the person who has abundant passion, desires, fondness, thirst, fever, and craving for the body. Then he comes down with a serious disease. As he comes down with a serious disease, the thought does not occur to him, "Oh, my beloved body will be taken from me, and I'll be taken from my body." He does not grieve, is not tormented, does not weep, beat his breast, grow delirious. This too is the person who, subject to death, is not afraid of death. Okay. So, the people who have abundant passion, desire, fondness, thirst, fever, craving for the body are not going to be afraid of death. How we can do that? Can you think about us without our body? I think it requires learning, actually, the teachings of the Buddhists can be so helpful to really get rid of this, attachment, this strong identity that we have created with this body. And definitely meditation is helpful. What we will really understand in deeper meditation, and also simply learning the teachings of the Buddha, is that actually this body that we are having right now is not a single thing. It itself is a continuous process. So it is the image of the body that we feel like as the one. But actually the body is always changing, continuously changing. Actually, if you really deeply think in terms of impermanence and constant change of the body, your body has died so many times already. Yeah, there's nothing more to die. Your body has already died so many times. Do you think that you have the same body you had when you were born? That's our image. We think that I am having this body from the moment I was born. This is the body I'm carrying from birth to death. That is our normal understanding. But do you really believe that you are having the same nose that you had when you were born? Of course, it was smaller than this, right? So what has become your body is actually, you were really small, tiny when you were born. Of course, even before that, we were a dot, right? And what has become our body is actually the food that we have eaten. And we keep eating, and body keeps renewing, and the old body is dying and new body is coming up. So of course, according to the science, right? How long it takes for all the cells to be replaced?
The longest is the bone, 7 years.
Okay.
7 years to have a new set of bones.
Wow. Not to talk about muscles and skins, right?
The rest are shorter than that.
Shorter than that.
Skin is
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. And when you leave this place, you will leave so much of your skin over here. And not to, of course, definitely here. Right? And so imagine that, so we have already kind of, left our few bodies already. When you think about your body in that way, that we have already, this body is in a constant change, moving and dying and renewing, dying and renewing. Our body has died so many times, so there's nothing new to lose. Then you can relax, right? and relieve that strong attachment to body. And at the same time, we can also reflect, with the help of the Buddha's teaching, that we don't really choose this body. You don't really make this body the way you want to look. Did you make this body the way you want to look? If you got a chance to create a body that you would like to be, is this a body you will create? We didn't choose this body, actually. These are genes of our parents, and of course our karmic influence is also added more details to this. So we didn't really choose this body, we just inherited this body, and later we developed attachment to this. It's not just we chose the best body in the world and developed attachment to it. We just got this body, And then secondarily, we develop attachment to it. Right? When you think about that, you don't have to be serious about this body. This attachment came later, actually. So, reflecting more on the teachings of the Buddha, and of course, deeply engaging in meditation, particularly kaya anupassana, contemplations on the body, in the Satipatthana Sutta, as explained in the Satipatthana Sutta, the more you do that, more you develop more actual, more realistic understanding of the body, and you are not afraid of living such a body anymore. Okay, and of course, okay, so do you think that you can be in the second camp? At least in transition, right? Yes. Okay, let us see the next part. Furthermore, there's a case of this person who has done what is good, has done what is skillful, has given protection to those in fear, has not done what is evil, savage, or cruel. Then he comes down with a serious disease. As he comes down with a serious disease, the thought occurs to him, I have done what is good, have done what is skillful, have given protection to those in fear, have not done what is evil, savage, or cruel, to the extent that there is a destination for those who have done what is good, what is skillful, have given protection to those in fear, and have not done what is evil, savage, or cruel. That is where I am headed after death. He does not grieve, is not tormented, does not weep, beat his breast, or grow delirious. This too is a person who is subject to death, is not afraid or in terror of death. Okay, if you have done enough good in your life, if you have given protection to those who are in fear, it's so interesting that one good deed is specifically mentioned here. Given protection to those who are in fear. If you meet anyone who is in fear, who is in trouble, even a stranger, there's a good opportunity that we can do something that relieve that fear. Maybe simply talking to that person, maybe giving some, some help, giving some donation, or comforting, helping someone to get rid of fear. And that's such a good thing. It's specifically mentioned here. And if you think that you have done so much good in your life, you have helped your family, and you have helped so many other innocent people, you have done so many merits, enough meritorious deeds, and help practitioners, monks and any other practitioners, and then you're quite confident, right? If you live your life well, the death should not be a bad thing, or death will not lead us to a bad place. And particularly if you are confident that you have not done any severe bad things in your life. Even though you have done some bad things, there are things you can do. But if you have that confidence that you haven't really, kill or harm others, and you are quite confident. So that's the strength we will get as a result of that good deed. So if you really feel that you have done so much good deeds, and then the moment arises, when the death moment arises, you will not be afraid, because you are quite confident that you will be in a better place, right? And I remember, our late chief, Bhante Dhammananda Mahatero, in his Dhamma talk about death and life, I think, he talks about, when your passport is expired, what you can do. You are going to worry about keeping the old passport? No point, it's expired, and it's time for you to let go of your old identity. If you are quite confident that you have done good deed enough, be ready for the new passport. Yeah. So you have that confidence that you will be in better place. Death will not be a bad thing. That actual death will be an opportunity for us to be in a better place. So that's kind of confidence. But remember, there is no the solution. Of course, if you have done enough good deeds, enough merits, definitely we will be in a better destination. But remember, again, we are growing old, dying, possibility of having more defilements. So just taking a better and better passport is not the solution. But at least, in this level, here actually Buddha is talking about to the general public, for anyone in general. So that's good, of course, better than, doing, going to a bad destination. Going to a good destination is really the good thing. But we need to remember that is not the solution. That is not the end. And we need to go beyond that towards the enlightenment. Okay, let's take the next part. Furthermore, there's a case of the person who has no doubt or perplexity, who has arrived at certainty with regard to true dharma. Then he comes down with a serious disease. As he comes down with a serious disease, the thought occurs to him, I have no doubt or perplexity. I have arrived at certainty with regard to the true dharma. He does not grieve, is not tormented, does not weep, beat his breast, or grow delirious. This too is a person who is subject to death, is not afraid or in terror of death. Okay, so when we have a deep, stable understanding of the Dhamma, and that's knowledge. Knowledge of the Dhamma gives you stability, gives you fearlessness. And knowledge, some understanding how this life happens. And even the very understanding of the process of death itself. When you learn the teachings of the Buddha, you also learn how a death occurs. And the whole definition of death, right? The definition of death in Buddhism is of leaving of three things from the body. Like ayu, or what we can call vitality, and ushma, means temperature, and vijnana, the consciousness. When these three things leaves the body, that's the definition of death in Buddhism. But the process of dying also explained to some extent. When it comes to the whole dying process, what's going to happen is that we will have a quick review of our life. Very quick, but it can be a very short moment, but the way we feel it is quite profound. Almost like showing the quick motion of your major events in your life. So then you will have that kind of review, the review of your major things in your life, and then you will pick one. You will pick, according to the theory of karma, you will pick whatever action that has most profound effect on your mind. Could be a good one, could be a bad one. The one that we call garuka karma, the one that has affected your mind the most, impacted your mind the most. It could be really, really good deed, or can be a bad one also. If we happen to kill someone, for example, we cannot really ignore that at your moment of death, for example. It's so profound, so it impacted your mind so much it can come to the forefront. So you will have quick review, and you will pick the most profound one. And then after that, you can, either you will kind of re-experience that whole experience, whole incident. You will re-experience whole incident once again. Or you will actually also explain in the visionary forms. Either you will see that, or you will see, we call kamma nimitta, you will see a sign of that good deed, not the whole one, a sign. Let's say if you have done some, really meritorious deed, really something that really impacted someone, and a really good deed, you will see maybe you gave some instrument, something. So instead of having the whole episode, you will see that instrument, some sign. Or you will see a robe or monk, whatever. Or if you haven't done any bad one, maybe you will, if you use any particular instrument to harm someone, you will see that instrument or weapon. So either you see the whole incident or you see a sign of that. And then it's also possible then you will, based on your karmic, force, influences, your consciousness is already kind of projected, going to project itself into the future. And someday you can have a sign of your probable next birth, called Gati Nimitta. Of course, we have stories in the Buddhist literature that some were experiencing kind of flowers, symbols or signs of your next birth. So the possible projection, based on the fashioning of the consciousness, it will project itself into the future. So we will see those things. What's going to happen whenever these things are appearing in front of us? We have no knowledge to see them as simply signs, simply images. We react to them as if they are really happening now. That's the kind of ignorance that's happening in us because we are not enlightened. Even right now, when you are imagining, when you are remembering something happened in the past, and our body is actually reacting to that as if they are really happening now. So, of course, our brain itself cannot distinguish what is real from the imagine. All this real or imagine, our brain respond the same way. That is why, computer games can really, can be addicted to, because brain does not distinguish real from the imagine. So that's how our mind is. So if you are not really have deeper meditation practice, when those things appearing in front of you, you react as if they are really happening now. As a result, your consciousness is so much attached to that incident, that sign, whatever, and then the body collapses. And of course, our craving for identity, craving for self-existence is not over yet, and that very craving will propel your consciousness to go forward and then attach to that, have that nature of the consciousness, and then establish in a new egg or new place of being. So when you know that whole process in advance, when these things are happening, you can either, so in meditation we develop this ability either to reflect those things as simple images, or also develop this ability to choose, drop and choose. We develop kind of mastery of our own mind. You can exercise that mastery at the moment of your death. And actually, even when you develop your mind to certain stages of enlightenment, there are incidents that actually the practitioners or monks have got like third stage of the enlightenment, but not the last one. The last one comes at the very moment of death. Because they are very good in the very function of the mind. When those things, images occurs to them, they don't really react to them as they're really happening right now. They contemplate that they are real images and really happening now, and they contemplate the impermanence of all these things, and they destroy the last bit of defilement at the very moment of death. That thing can happen also. It all depends on our mastery of our mind. That is why meditation can be so helpful. We can actually divert and navigate our mind, even the process of dying, if you have so much good skill in managing your mind in meditation. So imagine that having that kind of understanding, knowledge of the Dhamma, how confident we are going to be in facing the death, right? So having the deeper Dhamma, knowing the whole nature of life, samsaric life, having that deep, that profound, that stable understanding can be so helpful. When you are dying, you know generally what's going to happen. And you know generally how you can navigate your mind in death. So, let's read the last part. When this was said, Jnanasanin Brahmin said to the Blessed One, "Magnificent, Master Gautama, magnificent, just as if he were to place upright what was overturned, reveal what was hidden, to show the way to one who was lost, to carry a lamp into a dark so that those with eyes could see forms. In the same way has Master Gautama, through many lines of reasoning, made the Dhamma clear. I go to Master Gautama for refuge, to the Dhamma and to the Sangha of monks. May the Master Gautama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge from this day forward for life." So Janusani is a visitor, it's a Brahmin, And Buddha is giving this teaching as if he's going to an ordinary audience. At the end of this teaching, he has really became confident, had developed Saddha, and he really committed himself as a Buddhist, asked Buddha to accept him as a disciple. And this is what we find in many suttas at the end of the many sutta. The general idea here is actually, if you have some practice of the Dhamma, death is not something that we should be afraid of. Death is not actually loss. Death becomes an opportunity. Instead of a loss, become an opportunity. When you have this kind of Dhamma practice, death becomes an opportunity for you to go a step forward. If not to the enlightenment all the way, but at least a step forward. Because when you have such a deep Dhamma practice, the death is only giving you an opportunity to have another better place and then continue your practice and kick on your journey towards enlightenment. So in that way, death is not a loss within the Dhamma practice, it's an opportunity, it's a step forward. If not, you become enlightened right here, and it's a step forward. So you can consider it's like a pilgrimage. And make sure you die as a better person than you were originally born. Then it becomes a step forward, right? One step closer to enlightenment. One step closer to enlightenment. That is the Buddhist path. So I really hope that when you, as a result of, by contemplating, understanding the teaching, deeper teaching in this sutta, may you make your death one step closer to the enlightenment. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante, for that excellent discourse on the Abhayasutta. Now it's time for Q&A. I think we should only have about 10 minutes at the most. Yes, brother, can you just come to the mic, please, if you don't mind?
Good evening, Bhante, brothers and sisters. I would like to ask the questions, right? According to Theravada orthodoxies, rebirth follow immediately after death. But there is a concept, the Bado Tibetan teaching, saying there is an immediate stage, right? There is a funeral text that a freshly deceased person, you would go through chanting so that you can have peace. Yeah. So it's very close to the Chinese kind of culture, like doing the gong tic and those kind of things. The way I look at it is to appease, I would say, the spiritual consciousness so that they can, when they are alive, right, they do a lot of bad things, they never get a chance. At least the ancestors, the children, the knowledge can do good things, do alms. And there's even Buddha's Kasipatra saying about the daughter do a lot of alms so that parents, the mother can came from the hell, that kind of thing. I would like to ask Bhante about this concept of Bados, we call that Buddhist Tibetan spiritual books of death. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Yes. In Buddhist traditions, this is one point that different Buddhist schools have different viewpoints about after death. Is there immediate rebirth or there's an intermediate state? So we call Bado in Tibetan, and also we call Antara Bhava, intermediate state. Does the rebirth instant, or is there any in between period before the rebirth takes place? The Theravada standpoint in this regard is that actually the very reason that we will be reborn is our attachment, our very craving for self-identity, our craving for existence. And that's the whole force that push us to be reborn. So if you haven't get rid of that craving for existence, craving for self-identity before we passed away, and definitely that craving will push our consciousness to survive in a different way. And reason that the tradition is saying that actually it happens instantly, like when you leave this place, and the very survival, very existence means that you have to attach to other form. It's the very attachment that makes it possible to survive. So you have to attach to another form. So the very leaving of this form, body, is also the beginning of the attachment to a new form, a new beginning. And so there's no intermediate state in that sense. And the other problem with the intermediate state that if you say that there's a gap between the death and the rebirth, and then the question has to ask what exists in between. And with the whole idea of anatta, it's quite difficult to explain the intermediate state without have a concept of a soul or something which can exist independently. The whole Buddhist explanation is that consciousness cannot exist itself. It has to rely on nama rupa. The consciousness can only exist in relation to another form and another concepts, nama and rupa. So accepting that consciousness can exist itself without relying on to any form is resorting a kind of idea that is very close to kind of soul theory. So that is why I think Theravada tradition was very careful not to accept that kind of intermediate state. When it comes to the teachings of the Buddha, Buddha was much more interested in teaching how we can actually do something when we are alive, not when we are passed away. So this the detailed explanation is not available in the sutta itself. There's one or two or few explanation. But there's no technically explaining that this is what's going to happen, this is not going to happen. That explanation is not given there. Simply our craving for existence, propel our consciousness for another existence. And but in Theravada tradition, we also don't say that we can't help the dead people, even though they are born in a new birth. Still, we can help them because some beings can rejoice the good deeds that we are doing. And even every time we share our merits with devas, and they are already being born, and they can share merits. And so there are also other classes of beings who can share the merits. Although they are in a new birth, they can still share the merits. I think why the people have this idea of intermediate state is that, let's say when somebody passes away, and his karmic power is good enough for him to be born as a human being. So for a human being to born, there are so many other conditions have to be right. There should be a fetus, for example, right? When these conditions, like egg or fetus, when these conditions are not right, not ready, how then somebody will be born as a human being at once, instantaneously, right? So in that case, some people think that in that case, somebody has to spend some time until the mother is ready, right? So what I say that even in that state, that being can be born into another realm. So why we call intermediate is that it's from between one birth and another birth. In that case, even right now, we are in intermediate state from previous birth to the next birth, right? And so it can be a complete birth, not really the consciousness floating around. It's a new birth, it's a new attachment, new identity, new form. And of course, people again, another reason that they like to call it intermediate is that it is short in duration. But again, time is relevant to realms. The time human beings sense is not the time animals sense, and not the time the ghost or deva sense. again, we are only talking from human perception. There's a shorter period, therefore it should be intermediate state. I think we are imposing our human conception of time on that. So in that case, so Theravada explanation is that is immediate. We really attach to another form. That is why we say if you don't attach to another form, we'll be enlightened. So very form creates another birth in another realm. Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, let me play the devil's advocate, Bhante. Just now we talked about people who are afraid of dying and people are not afraid of death. People who are not afraid of death are basically the ones who have abundant craving for sensuality, abundant craving for the body, there are four, right? Bhante, how do you explain this? What about people like race car drivers, terrorists? We've got what's called mud drum pits, guys on small motorbikes that go like 200 kilometers an hour. Those guys are not afraid of death, but they have not fulfilled all this. How do you explain that? Just a question.
That's interesting. Yes. Yeah. So people who like to take risk, right? Yeah. And I think, I don't know about, people who commit suicide and terrorists. So then even, people who commit suicide should not be afraid of death. Right? Yeah. Dying, yeah. So, but what Buddha is telling that this is a healthy way to get rid of the fear. But, even people who are committing suicide, actually, they may not be afraid of the death, but that doesn't mean that they have given up craving for existence or craving for, actually, they are dying because they crave for a better way of being. So actually, the whole motive of committing suicide is called vibhava tanha, the craving for annihilation. And then craving for annihilation is also, so if you first accept an I, a separate I, and then you like the destruction of that. So, but about people who are taking the risk. The strange part, yeah. What do you think? I think they like the excitement more than, right? More than life, yeah.
They don't fear death. Yeah, of course they enjoy the pleasure of which one they do.
Disregard for death and fear, not fearing death are two separate things. They disregard death.
They don't fear death. Right?
But
When it happens, they need to fear that very moment.
yeah, before that,
Be fear.
yeah. Very moment, yeah.
Death is more likely the attitude of the race.
This, yeah. Yeah, it's a nice, nice, yeah, we can think about that, yeah.
Bhante, thank you for the excellent sharing. Sadhu. I just want to ask, upon death, as we all will go towards it, which object of meditation is best? I think, is it breath? Is it a neutral object? Is better as an object for meditation, or should I do more like Buddhanusati or loving kindness?
You mean
At the point of like we are sick and dying, yeah.
Oh, second.
So I'm meditating. You can choose a neutral object or you can choose a positive object. What's the difference if you choose one of the two? That's the first question. The second one, we have the opportunity to learn a lot of Dhamma in this life, and I'm very grateful. Is there any way, at the point of death, we want to retain this Dhamma? I know that, I don't know in this life where I'll be going next, but I think I'm getting somewhere still. I think I will be reborn somewhere. But at least I want to have the Dhamma in me, I carry along. What is the best practice I can do to ensure wherever I go next, I retain that Dhamma somehow? Yeah, and continue this path, you know.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sister. The first question, what is the best meditation to do at the moment of dying? I think, if you remember to have such a meditation the moment of death, that itself is, such a wonderful thing, because that requires so much prior training. People are really terrified and, they are confused, and will not be able to have such a clear mind. But if you, as a practicer or Dharma practice, we will be able to have such a thing. So we can actually choose, kind of, if you want to reborn in, a better, what we call sugati, more, like human and divine and kind of good rebirth, you can, you can focus on beautiful, wholesome object of meditation, like, for example, Buddha Nusati. And if you want to reborn in the Brahma realm, the realm that does not need any sensuality to be happy, the Brahma realm, and then Brahma Vihara, Metta and other meditation, where you really deeply engage in this, totally, engross our mind in the Metta, and we kind of transcend the sensuality, and we live in the Brahma realm. And if you can be a little more ambitious, like, you can really maybe release, destroy some of your defilements at the very moment of, dying, and then it could be like, breath and vipassana, even at the moment of dying. So, yeah. Yes. Sugati is like good destinations, like humans and divine realms. Yeah. Not necessarily, but the Brahma realms are the ones that you kind of transcend your sensuality, and then, and you have, other, but sometimes it doesn't mean that you have get rid of ignorance. But if you already have some, wisdom developed in this life, we can continue there. Yeah, continue there. So it's kind of, we can actually choose. Maybe the best thing is to do the meditation that you're already familiar with. That's something that you kind of frequently done, because very easily you can come to that stable serenity before actually the breath goes away. Yeah. So, but if you do loving kindness meditation so much, that'll be the Brahma world. If you do Buddha Anusati and other forms of meditation, maybe Sugati, and if you start to do some vipassana right there, maybe you'll be able to get rid of some defilement right at that moment also, and then be born in a more favorable state. And so I think what you asked about how to, yeah, I think if we have a good practice in this life, definitely we will find the Dhamma in the next life. And we have inclination for that. And of course we find even like people who are born in USA who have not any background and they have not exposed to Dhamma, but there are people who just listen to one talk, just read one sutta, and they can have a deeper confidence and start really very serious practice. And some, no matter how many times you tell them, they will not understand. So that, that shows our previous, thing. But there's also one specific, practice given in the Buddhist tradition, that if you do not disparage the Buddha, disparage the Dhamma, and disparage the Sangha, and then we will find Buddhism again. And if you have that disparaging, like, those triple gem, and then you get better chance that you will be away from triple gem for some time.